If we work together, we can get the criminal traffickers off our streets and off of the internet.
On April 11th, President Trump signed a piece of legislation based off of a pair of bills. One started in the Senate, known as SESTA, or the Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act. The other started in the House, called FOSTA, or the Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act.
Who's going to oppose something called the Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act, right? I mean, you're not going to make friends with that.
Both bills sailed through Congress. But critics of the law claim it'll end up hurting the people it's supposed to protect.
FOSTA and SESTA are like an enormous bully coming into our living room.
And not only that, it could end up changing the internet as we know it. Since 1996, websites have enjoyed a protection built into a communications law known as Section 230. It basically says that websites can't be held liable for the content posted by users on the site. FOSTA, which ended up being the final name of the law, creates an exception to Section 230, which would make websites responsible for knowingly facilitating prostitution or sex trafficking on their site. To understand why critics see this as a problem, think of it like a phone call. If you plan something illegal during a phone call, your phone carrier isn't held responsible for what you said during that call. They're just the service you used. This is sort of how the internet worked up until now. But under FOSTA, phone carriers might start to monitor your phone calls to ensure nothing illegal was going through, to protect themselves from liability. Of course, monitoring all of these phone calls is expensive, and illegal messages might slip through anyway. So, phone carriers might block certain numbers, or do away with the phones altogether. Monitoring and censoring would satisfy part of FOSTA. It would ensure that the site isn't facilitating prostitution or sex trafficking. Another option, though, is to stop monitoring altogether. That way, a website could claim that they didn't know about the illegal content on their site. These outcomes aren't theoretical. Websites are already reacting this way to FOSTA.
Ever since it passed the Senate, that's when websites started freaking out about their terms of services, and that's when we saw Craigslist Personals get shut down and Backpage get shut down.
Which I think on its own makes the point that this is really chilling quite a bit of material that's well outside the range of what theoretically this law addresses.
FOSTA was particularly aimed at Backpage.com, a website that has long been known for its sex worker advertisements. The thing is, though, FOSTA's stated purpose is to crack down on sex trafficking. It's right there in the title. But it's sex workers that are feeling the burden.
The main difference between sex trafficking and sex work is that sex trafficking is the non-consensual, often underage trafficking of human beings, and sex work is the consensual arrangement between two adult-aged people to exchange money for sexual services, whether those are fantasy services or overtly sexual services. This covers a wide range of work. It's not just prostitutes and escorts who are sex workers. Strippers are sex workers. Full-body sensual masseuses are sex workers. Cam models, live webcam models are sex workers. Porn performers are sex workers, et cetera, et cetera.
In fact, one of the things that FOSTA does is make sex workers more vulnerable to traffickers. And we're seeing this where you're a sex worker, you used to have an ad up on Backpage, now you don't have a Backpage ad, you're trying to figure out how to find your clients, and you start getting calls from people that are like, hey, I know you can't advertise anymore, I can help you get clients, give me a call. Which is pimping, right?
Critics of FOSTA say that the law will push sex trafficking and sex work back underground, offline, where authorities will have a much harder time tracking sex trafficking and getting victims the help they need.
We can't screen our clients as easily. We can't engage in the kinds of activities that help keep us safe. We can't find each other online as easily. We can't share safety information online as easily.
Senator Portman, the congressman who co-sponsored the legislation that became FOSTA, claims that with this law, authorities and victims of sex trafficking can go after websites like Backpage.com. Ironically, though, Backpage.com was seized by law enforcement before FOSTA was signed into law, which calls into question how necessary FOSTA was in the first place. Critics also worry that the law is so vague that its consequences could be even more far-reaching.
We're going to see a lot of self-censorship on the internet. We're going to see not just sexual content necessarily getting censored, but definitely adult content. How does Google know who's a sex worker and who's just like someone in love with someone very far away? You know what I mean? It's just that sex workers are the front line of that.